cloud. Oh, thanks, Chelsea. So welcome everyone. My name's Darren Bowling. I'm one of the senior cloud advisors here at Cloudreach. Today we're going to be talking around cloud for private equity. And we're really thankful today to have Chris Gabriel from Sapphire, who's the Chief Strategy Officer, joining us, talking about his experiences around the cloud, in particular Amazon Web Services, AWS. Chris has held a magnitude of digital leadership positions, and it brings a wealth of understanding and experience in this space. So it'll be good to question him on that. There's no slides or content to share, just people's thoughts and opinions and on how this the private equity world adopts cloud, etc., and also business cases for the cloud. The other guest we have today from Amazon is Abhinav Saxonan, who's the senior manager from AWS Private Equity Division, and we're just going to cover off three real key points: why AWS and the cloud is an attractive place for high growth businesses, the risk and remediation opportunities that the cloud can bring, and also how and when to create that business case and turn something that can be quite academic into something really tangible and to execute on. So without further ado, we'll get started. So probably best to hand over to you, Abhinav, first. If you could tell me a little bit about how AWS is supporting PE-backed businesses, and your experiences and your team's experiences, that would be a great place to start, I think.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you for having me as part of this webinar. I think with private equity-backed companies, what we find is they are actually, because they have received private equity investment, they're working on a value creation plan and trying to create value for their business during the investment cycle. And what we're really doing is working backwards from their own business goals and how we can help them in creating that enterprise value, right? So I would maybe group our efforts in three buckets. So one is around helping them with business growth and innovation. The second bucket is about helping them with driving cost efficiencies. And the third bucket is about risk mitigation. And when you look at business innovation and growth, there can be a multitude of things that the companies are doing, right? So whether it's creating new products and services, whether it is modernizing with cloud and data and AI ML, whether it's M&A acquisitions, whether it is scaling their business out. So a lot of areas that they grow and they drive top line, and again, figuring out what they're after and then helping them deliver that by leveraging the power of the AWS platform. On the other hand, if you look at PE backed companies, they are always looking to make sure their spend is as efficient as possible. So the cost optimization could come from migrating to cloud to make sure they have the right agility and scalability of the platform, and they only pay for what they use, and hence are able to make sure that they have achieved cost optimization. But then it goes further. So you're looking at modernization and helping make sure you are architected in the cloud in a manner that you are being as cost efficient as possible. And I think if I touch the last bucket, which is around risk mitigation, what you find is in the PE world, cyber resilience is a big topic right now, as an example, right? Or making sure the workloads you have in AWS are actually well architected. So working with them to make sure their security posture, their architecture posture is done correctly, so that one, they mitigate any high risks, but also they make sure they can leverage all the innovation we have in these spaces to drive the right visibility and the right KPIs and manage the whole security posture more proactively. Yeah, so long answer, but effectively, yeah, business innovation, cost management, and then risk management is where I think we see PE-backed companies working with us on.
Awesome. That's a really good answer. And I think there's a few things to touch on with that a bit later. But yeah, that's really good. Thanks, Abhinav. So I think one of the things that we've just been discussing particularly is around a business case to do something, to migrate or adopt public cloud and Amazon Web Services. And I think from my experience working with, lucky enough to work with Chris and his team and the board at Sapphire, is pinning a business case on something that's experimental in the cloud can be really dangerous. And we're in particular worked obviously closely with you, Chris, in constructing that broader business case that was really comprehensive in considering things like that current mode of operation and the costs of that current mode of operation and potential future costs that may occur as part of that. And then those hurdle rate costs, that cost of change that occurs for a business. And then finally, that future mode of operation. And once that change has occurred, and that change is not just technology, it's people and process and the change for your customers and their experiences as well. It'd be good to hear what factors help drive that business case from being something really academic that can be looked at academically from a spreadsheet or a Word document or something that made it really actionable for you guys at Sapphire. And it would be good to hear your experiences on that from start to finish.
Yeah, no, very happy to, Darren. And first of all, kind of echo everything that Abhinav said, right? All of that plus some more. Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion for us, and I think the word you use is academic, and it has to be very academic because your business case has to be incredibly robust. It's, Sapphire had been in operating as a business for 27 years before that private equity journey started, and the way I try and liken it, right, is we'd climbed steadily to about 16,000 feet over 20 odd years in terms of the altitude of the business, in terms of size and scale and growth. And what private equity do is come along and have a look at your plane and think, actually, that could go a lot higher. We're going to give you some new fuel in terms of cash, but the parts that are on the plane at that point may not be the ones that then allow that kind of next wave of accelerated growth, right? And clearly, what you don't have is another 27 years to get to the next height. You get that 3 to 5 year window on average, right? So depending on the size of that business. So for us, it was really interesting. We had a platform already. We had about 160 customers, and we'll call it cloud hosting, and that was split about 80% in terms of our own infrastructure, which you could call a cloud, but let's call it a hosting infrastructure. And we were fortunate to already be a little bit engaged in AWS over in the States. So our US platform, which was about 20% of our capacity, was already in AWS, but kind of in I call it an old world, a fairly simple infrastructure as a service model. So we looked at, first thing we looked at is what growth do we want, right? And we wanted great growth. Our premise behind our journey is to consolidate a market, consolidate what we call the digital operating platform market, which is very much around things like SAP, mid-market to mid-enterprise. And we wanted to really accelerate our cloud delivered customer, both in terms of a standard model, but also in terms of some value add. So first of all, we started to build a business case, and the start of that was to go and kiss a bunch of people, vendors, kiss a load of frogs. But we really wanted to understand how they could help us, not on the technology, but to build the business case, to build and a very robust business case as well. You don't have the luxury, and you shouldn't, even if you're not private equity backed, but you certainly clarifies the mind in terms of the outcome that you say you're going to deliver. You need to be able to deliver, and within the time frame you say you're going to deliver it. And I think what was really fascinating for us, and I take all the points that Abhinav said as absolutely key in terms of growth, in terms of risk, in terms of scale, in terms of new service deployment. is what was really useful for us and what was really compelling to us was the ability within the AWS and the Cloudreach conversations that we were having to put some really big flags in the sand about when we could do stuff, how long it would take, how long it would cost, what the payback would be, because we were able to model what we had across the estate, but the process and the program that you had in terms of aligning to our journey was really, really important. We couldn't be vague. We couldn't hope we could do it. We had the ambition to migrate all of those existing customers across onto a new platform, and then see that new platform as the ultimate scalability for our business as we break new barriers in terms of our journey. So a bit of a waffle, but the point is the business case was really important, but it was the business case robustness and the ability for a partner to help us not just build it like that, but build it very specifically around what we had, what we would have, and the stages and the milestones we'd need to go through to get to the answers that we wanted. And we're in migration phase now with yourselves. The definition of time and the time limiting factor and your ability to do it within time limited stages because of the way that things like the map process works was really important. The easiest thing we could have lulled into was, let's have a chat about it for a year and figure out what we want. You don't have that luxury, right? So no. that to me is a big takeaway to deliver all the things that Abhinav was talking about before.
Okay, and to elaborate on and dig deeper on that from a business case perspective, obviously I was really lucky to be there with yourself and then present to the board and the wider organisation with some of those things. There's obviously conversations that were had within the business. It'd be interesting to know what their major concerns in taking on such a transformational adoption program was, and how were you guys able to mitigate those and articulate those things when they came up, and who brought what up when, if you have any tips, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I tell you what's interesting. I'm going to tell you said before. I think is really fascinating because I think it was the perception of lots of people of building the business case around. And I'll use the famous fingers in the air. We don't do it anymore for cloud, do we? We used to do that a lot for cloud. Because this perception that it was some ethereal, conceptual, and it would be hard to pin down. And actually, it was totally the reverse. I think the first thing that delighted me, and it surprised me a little bit, but delighted me, was this was an engineering exercise around the infrastructure, the service we were going to design, how we'd operate it, the processes, the security. It wasn't let's go and have a play with the cloud. And in a way, the engagement that we had with yourselves and with AWS was more certain than maybe some of the traditional players that we spoke to in being able to pin down exactly what we'd need. So I think that's a one perception of, like, if there's anything anybody could come away with from today, from the things I'm going to say, is the outcome and the certainty of the outcome around the public cloud, because of just the scale of experience that I think you guys have got now, and AWS clearly have got, actually makes it more certain than some of the ones that you'd think were the traditional models of certainty, because of the level of tooling and that. So the first worry was, oh my God, it's the cloud. What's that going to turn out like? And actually, we were able to, and our teams were feeding back constantly to the different, senior leadership in our business, and obviously we exposed senior leadership to you as well. So we didn't make this a technical exercise, because it's much a commercial, even bigger a commercial exercise than it is a technical exercise. So we exposed you guys, to our CEO and to our COO and to our CFO. So we weren't hiding in technical rooms. So that's the first thing. Is the biggest worry was, oh, it's the cloud. What will this just look like a big fluffy thing in the end? And can we really do it? And actually, as I said, I think everybody's got a totally opposite perception of that, which is it's more certain, it's more structured, it's easier to get to definitive answers. Yes, you can play a lot, but you don't have to. You can get to really good answers really quickly. You can design an architecture, design a model, and a lot of that is those engagements are clearly, and you can talk about this, is pre-done by yourselves and AWS, because you've done it loads of times. So that was the biggest thing for me, and that sated a lot of risk nervousness from people. And then the other one was clearly the map exercise, which was, but will it really cost what we think it's going to cost? Because surely it'll just go crazy, and we'll end up spending £1 bazillion, and we won't either save the money we wanted, we won't reduce the risks, we won't do those things. And I think the second thing was the specificity of the process that you took us through actually got to what we felt were really strong answers and outcomes, and the vagueness of it dissipated quite quickly from it's the cloud to actually it's a very architectural, physical, well-ordered, well-structured process that you go through, and actually the outcome is more certain maybe than other options. And there was a lot of converse thinking. So really, that was it. And I think one of the other things and again, I don't know whether it's specifically private equity, but clearly there's other shareholders around the table who also want to know those things. So the transparency, the ability to demonstrate that is really important, because there's people who everybody wants an outcome within a time period, and you can't be, but trust us, it'll be great. They want to know how it's going to be great. And I think, absolutely, I think building that confidence behind the scenes was really, really important. As I said, I think it's a well-ordered methodology that you guys have done lots and lots of times before. AWS have now done tens of thousands of times before. And I guess my final point would be the interesting bit for me in working through Cloudreach and then with AWS is that the scale of knowledge and experience that we were able to tap into was phenomenal. And I'm not saying it because you're on, Darren, in any shape or form, but I've said it to you a number of times, and I've said it internally, is the quality of people that you fielded was just world class. And I guess that's just the wisdom of the massive crowd that's now within your organization, but more importantly within AWS, is that you've done this for tens of thousands of organizations in different types. So we're not the first, and we're tapping into that depth of knowledge and experience, not a veneer of knowledge and experience. And I think that's really important for us as well. That gave us the confidence is the key word, right? Commercials, really important. Confidence was the number one word we kept going back to. Are we confident? Are we confident? I know our CEO said it to your CEO a few times. Ignore everything else. Can we build the confidence that we can get this done?
Yeah, and I think it's scratching the surface and making sure there's depth there. There's always going to be depth within Amazon, but making sure it's there as well. For those on the call, Chris touched on it. I referenced something called MAP. If you're not familiar with that from an Amazon perspective, that's the Migration Acceleration Program. That's a program that allows you to, that AWS will help with a partner to accelerate your program of adoption to the cloud platforms. And that includes expertise and credits and funding that can be leveraged at certain points down the road. And there's certain rails in place to make that happen. And that does help structure your thought processes. One of the first things as part of that we did and executed on was that concept of a business case first, to make sure that it's worth going through those gates with Amazon, and they're all part of that. So I think kind of, building on that, obviously, Abhinav, you work continually with the private equity companies and firms. Could you tell us and articulate some of those commonplace things that you've just heard from Chris on that, and maybe articulate further the points that he's made and show us the wider landscape from a PE perspective and general business as well?
So I think what Chris mentioned, I think maybe I'll just pick up a few points that he was talking about, right? So the first is, if you look at MAP there is the structure in the program is built based on the experience of the thousands of migrations we have done and the experience that the partners bring, like Cloudreach, to be able to execute that on the ground, right? So I think that structured methodology really helps crystallize the process and helps, I think, get that single plane of visibility, right? So that your stakeholders, and in a PE world, you will have investor stakeholders who want to know when the value is being given. And I think that really helps. And I think the other thing, which is more specific to, I'm assuming, to PE is, given you have a very finite time window to create value, you want to deliver value fast and you want to deliver value incrementally. So you cannot wait 3 years for the first return to come, right? So as you deep dive, you are able to create that phases, you are able to really bring the value faster. And maybe if I expand further, what I'm seeing is you see a lot of inorganic growth. So you will see a lot of M&A and bolt-on acquisitions. And so to maybe take Chris's methodology of the plane flying steadily and now going faster, you are actually also adding more engines and maybe more windows to the plane, right? So you are changing the aeroplane as it is being accelerated. And so how do you actually bring those bolt-ons into your company? How do you get value from them by moving them faster to cloud? So I think that's another challenge or question we get. And then maybe extending that is around pre-deal support, right? You can create a lot of value once you are in the business, but can you actually identify the value upfront as part of your pre-deal diligence to see if you're acquiring a company, what value you can create with cloud, but also if, let's say, you are a company being exited, your posture is correct so that you're not leaking value to the next investor, right? So I think that is another element. And maybe the last I'll add here is around skill development, which Chris was talking about in terms of skills, external partners like yourselves are bringing in, but also this is a transformation and you're building skill set internally in the company. So whether it's technical skills for your technology teams or whether it's a wider cultural change that you need to enact, right, to make sure companies are able to innovate at a faster clip and they are able to work in two pizza teams and maybe experiment a lot. So I think migration as a technical exercise, yes, there's a lot of support, but then you need the skill development, culture change, everything else, and innovation to actually drive incremental value from the migration that you may have done.
And that's a really good point. That leads on to my last kind of question, which hopefully you both have a view on, which was obviously that transformation or migration to the cloud. That's great, but Chris, I want to touch on some work that may be going on around additional services, service line introduction, improvement customer experience, and anything innovating or innovational that's occurring for you guys now you're in AWS, not necessarily as part of that migration, but also that footprint that's in North America as well. Is there anything that, because you're there already, that you can turn on or that you're offering to your clients or consuming that's not something you would normally have thought of, or something that's interesting or different that you could touch on? And where did that demand come from, and how did you either productize it or consume it?
Yeah, and Darren, and I think there's multiple aspects to our business case. One, firstly, was scale, risk, stability, happy customers, right? So we recognized our existing infrastructure platform, was designed for a different age, and we wanted to be able to modernize that. So that move and modernize concept. But if you think about value creation within businesses, it's about cross-sell, it's about upsell, it's about being able to attach new things to those install-based customers. I mean, I've said, we've acquired 4 businesses in the first 12 months of the first 12 and a half months of our journey. And you don't know what you're going to buy at the stage, right? So when you think about it, we go, right, we've taken a whole bunch of customers into this new world, and there's value in that. But the next value is, what else can I do with them? What else can I offer them? So we've used the marketplace a lot. So we've moved some of our other services that we had. We've moved those through the marketplaces to extend our relationship with you, but also be able to add some new services to our customers. We've been able to do things in different ways, like DR and HA, so add some immediate opportunity for value creation to our customers, but also to ourselves. And then what we've been looking at is, how do we then attach new services? And there was 2 good examples for me. One is that the customers we use, they are heavily focused on things like RPA and automation. And by attaching too many bots to our old platform, we knew that we were going to struggle on scale. So by moving into the AWS world, we've not only got unlimited scale of the core, but we've also got unlimited scale of the things we can then point at those things to do some good stuff, right? So we see that as real value. And then the big thing for us is, like all organizations in our space, our customers have lots of data. And lots of data that we weren't really doing much with to add much more value around things like ERP, reporting, and those kind of good things. So what we're now able to do is then attach some real value sticky services. And obviously, I think it's, how many services can you cross-sell, upsell? What's the stickiness of those? All of the things that private equity people get really excited about, right? Well, if you've got someone's ERP system and you're basically just hosting it, you've sold them 2 or 3 products, right? So you've got multiple products attached. You can then add digital workers on top. Well, that's both a product attach and it's more stickiness. But as soon as you start to leverage replaying their data back to them in different ways or adding value around things like the data, actually that becomes the real core service, and it's the other stuff that becomes a little bit contextual. So you not only add new services, but you add the stickiness of those new services. And a really good example is we're working with one of our customers at the minute who, 50,000 images in their image library, in their product information system on their ERP platform. And they actually, I know the CEO emailed me and said, look, we've got to tag all of these images. I can hire a bunch of people to do it manually, but there must be something you can do with us. And we were instantly able to say, yeah, we can use recognition within AWS to do image recognition and tagging for you. Sapphire never been able to have that conversation before, right? It was just something that would have been, don't know what you're talking about. Instantly, it was, oh, yeah, of course we can do it. Now we've used a little data specialist partner to do the first couple, which is fine. But we've instantly got potentially a new really sticky service that we can take to our customers. And because I'm in the AWS ecosystem model, I can then add those things. So we're adding in marketplace services, we're attaching our own services, and then we're eking out those innovation points. I think the bit we learned really quickly is you have to be able to do some of this stuff in parallel, is because you're trying to create value in parallel as well. You're not trying to do it sequentially. So we've kind of got our move and modernize program going over here, and then we're doing some innovation in some separate areas of the business and extending our value engagement with AWS, who our account manager, who's fantastic as well, and also yourselves. But we're trying to add value now, not wait till the end of the migration phase, because otherwise we're kind of wasting the opportunity of really exploiting the business case. And the business case was move, modernize, was commercial, was stability, security, and all those things, but it was also new service attach. It was about exploiting the AWS platform in all of its forms that we could do, not just basically lifting what we had into something that was better but wasn't transformative. So yeah, that's the thing we're doing, and we're doing those things in parallel, not obstructing our migration program, but adding value in other bits of the business.
Yeah, the plane still has to fly, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. You want a great entertainment system on it as well, but you still want the plane to stay in the air, right? So you need the stability and the aerodynamics and all that stuff. But if you can, we pick our airlines based on what our companies will pay us to go on, but also you get a favorite for the entertainment system, you get a favorite for all those, and we're trying to add those bits in as well, so our customers feel they're on a really interesting plane, not, and the great thing is they'll spend money with us. If we add value to them, they'll spend money with us. And because they're on our platform, it's dead easy for us to add those things, easier than it would otherwise be to add those things in. So I guess my point is you've got to explore the whole relationship opportunity as well. Don't go into it too narrow. Is think about the wider opportunity to scale with yourselves and obviously with AWS, because the more you do, the more value you get back. And we've had some great workshops across different bits of with you guys, but also with AWS as well. So Cloudreach have been playing a huge role, but AWS have surfaced some really interesting stuff for us.
Excellent. So that kind of concludes our kind of fireside chat around the business case and Sapphire specifically in PE as an organized as a specific sector. We have a bit of time. If there's any questions, please do feel free to drop them in the chat now while we still have Chris and Abhinav on them and myself if they're pertinent. So do fire them in. I'm not sure if I can see them. Hopefully Chelsea or Anna will help.
We don't have any in at the moment.
Any questions at all?
I've got one for Abhinav, if that's all right. Well, we're just
shoot.
I'm just interested in Abhinav in terms of the different kinds of private equity backed firms that are, you know, we're in the app space, the you know, the kind of application space. Are you seeing a really good range of either tech companies across different areas adopting kind of the Amazon cloud engagement? So I'm just interested, you know, because obviously we've got our lens on it, but you know, and it's a much wider world than I live in. So
I think maybe if we talk about trends, right, in the PE space. So I mean, just a bit of macro trend which drives the behaviors. The macro trend is there is a lot of what people call dry powder, so effectively money that PEs have to invest. And so I think it's at record levels. And so you see PEs increasingly investing a lot of cash in companies and helping them grow, right? So there is the PE market itself is growing a lot. The second element is digital transformation is become a real value driver. And so historically, maybe if you look at 10 years or maybe 15 years before, PE firms used to look at value creation as financial engineering, but now it's a lot about operational value and digitally driven value, right? And so one trend is you see a lot of PE firms hiring operating teams and digital transformation experts who help the individual companies. And then you are also seeing like a lot of investment going in tech, a lot of investment going in healthcare, but I mean, across pretty much all sectors, right? So PE firms are investing across all sectors. And what that implies is suddenly technology, digital transformation, the role of CIO, CTO is something that's discussed at the board level in a PE-backed business, and they are trying to really see how this can drive value. And hence, my team exists, right? So we are able to then work with them, really understand what the PE firm wants from the business, and then make sure that as AWS, along with our ecosystem, we are able to help them and their companies deliver that.
Yeah, perfect. I see a question in as well.
There's a question in the chat. So what advice would you give on how to get started? What's the first thing an organization needs to get right to build a secure or robust business case? So I can touch a little bit on my experience, and hopefully, Chris, I'll hand over to you. So from my experience, the most important thing from a first step is understanding your existing mode of operation costs, having a grasp of not just the technology, but the people costs and all of licensing, absolutely everything that you have today and what you may need to invest in tomorrow. That's really, really important. And Sapphire were fantastic at having a view of that, mainly because of the position they've been around the acquisition that had occurred and for that reason. But that's probably step 0.5, I would say. Having that in place is really important. Chris, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, I sorry, what did I answer? And it was that, and we ended up with, I think, 17 categories of operational cost, people, licenses, security. So we ended up, I think it was a 17-layer matrix that we thought was kind of the field of vision that we wanted to look at. And we didn't go into this, by the way, with a preordained view that it would be public, you know, hyperscale public cloud by any stretch of the imagination. So right. We did that. What are we trying to? Have we got any problems in what we're trying to fix? Then how do we quantify what we're trying to fix across a sensible but not exhaustive list of categories? and then looked at every single one of those in isolation. And obviously, I think that's how you guys responded, and then that led very nicely, accidentally, very nicely into the MAP program. But we did a lot of work on that because we recognised that if we didn't do all of that groundwork, we may not make the right decision. So the business case for us was, first of all, figure out how we'd measure that, and we spent quite a few months figuring that out. We didn't just go, oh, it's the hyperscale, figure out which one. We did that work, and then that's how we went through our process. Thankfully, we had a few things. I think most organizations have got a few things they know they want to fix.
Yes.
So if you're sitting there going, this is purely to save some money, you probably you shouldn't start in the first place. But I think we went into it knowing there was a few things that we wanted to build into our business. Scale, security's coming. I mean, the other thing as well, by the way, security is phenomenally important. And if there's one reason to get into, if there's one big thing, cost and all that, is assurance for customers is fundamental. Most of the pre-questionnaires we get now for customers on security and operational assurance, they're all written around the public cloud. They're all written around the hyperscalers now. They're not written around private clouds or semi-professional hosting companies. And I think as you look at the next couple of 3 years, I know the government in the UK is introducing a bill for MSPs, where the penalties around cyber risk are going to be phenomenal. If there's a white paper out that's heading for MSPs soon, if you're an MSP and you take private equity and it's a 3 to 5 year journey in the next 6 months, that I would just dig out that stuff and go, can we do that not being in a world-class environment with all of the controls and all the stuff that you guys have got? I think it'd be really hard. In fact, I would say it's going to be really hard not to operate in that environment and stay compliant and stay on the right side of the law, but also on the right side of customers' expectations over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not sure your average operational team in a traditional MSP running anything but hyperscale is going to work over the next 3 to 5 years. I just don't think people will be able to keep up. But we built all of that into our business case, thankfully, and it worked through.
I think the other 2 points we touched on previously is your cost of change and your future operation. I think that cost of change, a lot of people forget people and process cost of change. So training, budget for that, for it touches lots of things, right? We talked a lot with
dual running costs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, all that. You don't turn one off and turn one on, right? There's a bunch of and I'm sure I guarantee we'll have missed some things because no one's perfect and we're definitely not. But yeah, people change, skills changed, dual running operationally, dual running costs, dual running systems, tools. We were very heavily in our own infrastructure, and therefore we had more of that, many years of that embedded in the business. It would be great to have been greenfield, right? Oh my hallelujah, right? It would have been wonderful, but most people aren't, and when they take private equity, they're usually not because they've already got a business. So there is a lot of moving parts that you've got to keep your eye on, and we've got a great team now working with your team. But we've in our team, just as an example, we've got an accountant in our transformation team. Keeping an eye on the bills, keeping an eye on the dual running costs, keeping an eye on what we're spending, keeping an eye on contract ending, keeping an eye on you've got to have that, right? Especially a reasonable scale, because it's very easy to miss those things. So we've got an accountant, obviously we've got project managers, we've got technical, but we've got a multidisciplinary team doing the work to make sure we are always on the money, right? Because you definitely don't want to get it. You're going to get it wrong, but you don't want to get it too wrong. Right?
No.
Let me just add one thing, right, which is even taking a step before and answering the first line, which is how do you get started? And my view is engage. So if you are looking at cloud as and migration to cloud, I think engage with AWS, engage with partners. I mean, people like Darren and Cloudreach to be able to, I think, tap on the experience and the methodology, right? So that to Chris's point at the start, changing it from, oh, this is cloud to it's actually very tangible business case with an architecture behind it. So I think step one is really reach out and engage. And I think when you look at the value from the move, right? Yeah, cost is one, but I think Chris and Darren touched on staff and staff productivity, and yeah, it has cost, but then you drive that. There is business value that you're driving, which I think is the bulk. So being able to upsell, cross-sell, add new services, and then operational resilience, which Chris was talking about, just making sure it's secure, it's operationally resilient, you have the right uptime. I think all that can be baked into the business case. And the last bit is, as you engage, there are programs like MAP, which provide the methodology, but also commercial incentives and co-investment from AWS perspective to help you through that journey, right? So the dual run cost that Chris was talking about is something we can support with. So definitely, I think engage, and then I think go along with us to get the full expanse, but also move faster with all the experience.
Yeah, and one final thing for me, Darren, a great point, Abhinav. One of the things we didn't really understand, I'll be really honest, is the amount of co-investment and skin in the game that AWS would bring to the process. So make sure in your business case that you're asking early about what that might look like and factoring it in, because actually it makes the business case even stronger. And we probably got to it, but we got to it slightly later down the process. And I think if we got to that earlier in the process, we might have made a few quicker decisions, to be honest. So I think don't definitely ask that question and get Cloudreach advice or AWS advice on that, because it can build the business case even stronger, and then means you can go a bit faster, because it's less of a decision to make in certain areas. And I think that's not very well known of the scale and the potential of that can bring.
So, two other questions. So one's from Sumit, which is, what's the biggest barrier you see to cloud adoption in the PE space? What stops it from occurring?
My sense might be it is that it works in very defined-ish time frames, and most companies have evolved quite a long time before they get into, because it's not venture capital, it's PE, right? So there's already a business, and the businesses we've acquired, some of them have been, we were 27 years, one of them's 11 years, 9 years, so they're not, they've and you're then trying to condense all of that into a 3 or 5 year usually journey, maybe 7, but most 3 to 5, and it's just getting it all done. And but at some point you've got to do it, right? And I think what you've got to do is just think, and our thought was, we probably don't need to, do we urgently need to do it in this wave of growth? And the answer was probably maybe 60-40 yes to no. So it wasn't compelling, but we then said, but if we don't do it now, we're just storing up a problem for us in the next one, because then we're going to have to go from X size to X times 5, right? So we were going, the hockey stick kind of model. And we said, if we don't crack into it now, when we go through the next wave, someone's going to come and say, show us what you've got. And we're going to go, well, but what we're going to be doing is this. And we said, let's just dig it. So I think a bit of confidence and an understanding what that slightly longer journey looks like. And I think it is a little bit of confidence, and also a lot of unknown as well. Things like MAP, we didn't really know about that. And I bet you most private equity firms probably don't know that mapping. And when they're buying a business, they can sit there and go, actually, we know what we could do with that, and there's quite a bit of goodness in it for us. So I think it's a bit of education as well. I think it's some of those things that maybe PE firms don't know, and the firms that are getting in that journey don't know. So a bit of confidence and a bit more education on some of the things that you guys can bring, I think is probably what's stopping it more than anything. I would say, what's the alternative now? I think if you're saying I'm a private equity backed fast growth business, the best way to grow fast is to be in this new world, because you've got unlimited scale virtually. What a great selling point of your business we just built unlimited scale to our customer base, right? Oh, fantastic, right? What more could you want? So.
And one last question from Daniel, which was lots of talk around there being a skill shortage, especially in the cloud sector. How do you see this impacting the way PE can create value when they engage the customers?
I'll let you answer that, Darren. You must know. I've been having Darren. You're probably seeing it more than we are.
Yeah. I think I read recently with the Great Resignation that it's one of the biggest gulfs in skills demand to skill shortage since the dot-com boom, which is which is just incredible. How PE can create value when they engage. So I can't talk about PE, maybe Abhinav has an answer for that, but in my experience, there's a lot of leveraging of organizations that have those skills and are upskilling and doing together, and then the partner steps away, and then the business is able to be self-sufficient, rather than a full-blown do it for me. There's this kind of do it together mentality. So whilst an organization can upskill and is self-sufficient. Abhinav, do you have any specifically from a PE perspective for their customers?
I think we see a lot of support or ask around skill creation, right? So we need to help companies with their existing teams create that skill set. So AWS provides a lot of, whether it's digital training programs, whether it's training that we deliver or our partners deliver. So there are a lot of programs to create that skill set in the team and help them ramp up. But at the same time, to what Darren was saying, if you want to move at speed, I think Darren and Cloudreach, and they can really bring that skill set up front, get you up and running, move fast as you build up your skill set, and then you are able to sustain that knowledge within the business, right? So yes, but I'll not hide it, right? Skill set is something that it requires investment. We have a lot of investment going into creating skill set with our customers. But I think when you combine our training programs with the experience our partners are bringing, I think you can actually move on the journey quite fast and then have the right skilled people to take the business forward.
I can't see any more questions. So I think we can wrap up. Anna, Chelsea, is that okay? Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time. Please feel free to reach out if you'd like to. The three of us are on LinkedIn, no doubt. Chris's content is always good.
Thank you. I'll try my best.
Yeah, and hope to see you all again soon.
Super. Thanks for hosting us, Darren.
Thank you, Darren.
Chris, thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.